All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the workshop of creating your own physical media. So to introduce myself real quick, where is the window? There it is. Okay. So, hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for so much for being here. I'm excited to show you guys some resources and also some techniques into creating your own physical media on multiple different sectors. So, first off, to introduce myself, hi, my name is EvanTheFloydian, and I've been creating VRChat films for about 8 years, including technically three features, but mainly two: Super King Assassination and VR Digital Frontier. And I've been using physical media only in the last year because my job actually has us work with a lot of even VHS tapes and CDs. I work at a law firm, so I'll get evidence and medical records that are on physical media. And after messing with that, I realized I could make my own, and it's such a fun thing to do, especially having it like physically in your hand of your own works. So this picture here, on the top are some VHS tapes and some Blu-rays that I've made of my own films, and also a few that I made custom for ones that I personally didn't want to spend $100 on a Blu-ray that already existed, so I thought just making my own would be fun. How did I get the actual movie? Let's not talk about that. Instead, we're going to talk about, again, creating mainly media of your own creation, your own films, putting it in this kind of format. And also, we're going to be, we'll be talking about VHS labels and discs. That'll all be there for you. And then here's some more labels I did for the custom ones I did. And even slipcovers, we have some of that too. So, again, I've only been doing this for about a month. This is my current collection, or 2 months actually, and it is really such a fun, little crafty project, again, to create stuff of your own making. And also, these discs not just only have the actual movies themselves, but also menus too. We're going to cover that as well. So, before we dive into it, again, this is what we're going to be covering, is a quick history of physical media, why we should even use it in the present day, even though streaming is technically king, and also how to create your own in VHS, DVD, and Blu-ray, which will basically be the same thing, along with 4K discs, and then maybe we'll hit CDs at the end. And I'll also have a link for extra resources, including some of my own templates on not just movies and video, but also cassettes, CD cases, basically any kind of major physical media you will be able to do. We are not going to be covering laser discs. I know I actually had someone like, hey, are we going to do Betamaxes and laser discs? No, we're not. We're not doing that. And we are not going to be covering rips. I know if you are here to learn about how to rip movies, we're not doing that because it is too much of a headache. And honestly, like talking about firmware and software is just too much of a hassle. So sorry, we're not going to be doing that. But little quick history of home video. Again, the way we have it currently right now is actually very, at least in recent years, is actually not that old. Now, back then, of course, when film became the major form of film was pretty much film. It's movies, the birth of it. The only way that people could actually have any or rent it was wealthy people who had their own home projectors and would actually receive early films, even silent films or anything from the 60s and then beyond or before. You would actually be able to rent or even receive in the mail, which I actually didn't really know that, and it's really cool. But Betamax with magnetic tape came onto the scene in 1977 and 1975. Now, the technology had actually already been there since the 50s, but using it in home media in a way that could be dispersed through the general public was big. And VHS only came a few years later using the same kind of technology, and there was the first format war. And VHS, of course, surpassed Betamax, although home video was still it was a niche market because the machines were quite expensive for the time. And VHS, of course, defeated Betamax because it had longer recording times. and we'll talk about that a little bit later, how you can record for like not just the 2 hours that I gave you, but even like 6 hours or sometimes even more, but it would kill the quality. But that ability was still just mind blowing and something that Betamax couldn't do. Also, the machines were cheaper. And then Sony came in with their own, of course, and VHS just took over. Then in the late 90s, DVD was introduced and of course exploded in popularity because instead of magnetic tape, you had these tiny discs that had grooves on the bottom that were read by a laser, which is, I mean, same concept kind of as vinyl, except it's not a needle, it's a laser. And second format war was Blu-rays that took over. DVDs took over VHS, but then Blu-ray came onto the scene, and then they tried to do HD DVD. And HD DVD is a kind of the same thing. Here's the reason that Blu-ray is king, and it's because of accessibility and also what labels you have under this format. For example, when the Blu-ray was featured as being in the box with the PlayStation 3, it essentially killed HD DVD. Now, HD DVD did have an external drive that you could plug into the Xbox 360, but again, this was something that you had to get on the side, and also when sales were going down. Now, some studios were under the Blu-ray label, but people jumped ship when HD DVD, of course, was sinking in numbers, and so that just killed it completely and is discontinued. Streaming then got introduced, which we all use right now. 4K Blu-rays got introduced in 2015, and as of now, streaming is still king. But is it better? Is streaming actually better than the hard physical disc that we actually get? Yes and no. The bitrate is exceptionally larger on 4K Blu-rays, and streaming, again, is like sometimes even less than half of what these discs actually have. And they also store more color data, so there's not like a lot of aliasing or blocking, and shadows and gradients are really good. There's no need for buffering, but also, but the thing is that streaming does have some of the more high definition or even just more recent versions of some of these titles that are on physical media, but again, the quality can still be better on the streaming version. That's just what's available. But why even use physical media? If streaming is better in some of these ways, why even use it? Well, in the context of VR filmmaking, everything we do is virtual. All of our props, our costumes, our worlds and sets, everything we do is virtual. Everything is digital. So there's three main reasons why people are still doing physical media. First off is, of course, nostalgia. Like during a time when these formats were king and everywhere and streaming didn't exist, of course, people want to actually be able to, go back in time and, kind of relive that kind of era, but also have their videos in that format as if, it did exist in that time and use it on old hardware. It's also, it's internet apocalypse. Oh my god, the world is ending proof. I mean, you never know what. Okay. Yep, that definitely proved my point right there. You're if your content, God forbid anything happens, just disappears, that would really suck. I totally didn't plan that. Number 3 is ownership. Of course, like for example, I really got into Doctor Who about 10 years ago, a few years back, and when I really got into it, Netflix took it off. I was so upset that there wasn't even a leaving soon tag. There it was just gone. So sometimes you'll see people complain about even things that they've paid for online just gets revoked. And it's sad that, companies are allowed to do this, but if you have it physically, that's not an issue. And of course, number 4, it's just a good idea to back your stuff up. And they still make it. Blu-rays, VHS cassettes, audio cassettes, CDs in all kinds of different formats. They still make it and is still able, at a decent price. So again, you'll have no short of finding this kind of material, and even eBay is really good for that kind of stuff. So again, we're going to be covering VHS, DVD, and Blu-ray, which also covers 4K discs. And also we'll have some resources for slipcases, covers, and also labels for discs. Now again, this is physical media, so we will need things. This is not free. This is a craft kind of hobby or thing that we're going to be doing. So it's going to cost money, but my goal is to give you the best options and also the cheapest options. And again, we'll have a Dropbox I'll be giving you with all of your templates and other resources. So first off, we're going to cover VHS. Now, first off, you're going to need a VCR. All right. That's just, you're going to need that unless you're going to just put a filter on it and say it was recorded on VHS. That's all you're going to do. And even then you're not actually recording it on a real tape. But I will say this, I have 2 VCR DVD combo machines and 2 standard VCRs. All of them I acquired those through friends or family members. So ask around. Ask your coworkers, hey, does anybody have like a CRT or a VCR or anything they just want to give away? They totally will do that, and that's where I got my stuff. So it's out there. And even then, some people just want to give stuff away too. Like they don't really even care. So I've seen good VCRs for like $20, and there's some stores. If you go to like Savers or Goodwill, there's also yeah, exactly, like flea markets. Some people will give it away for a very good price. And again, there's VCR DVD combo machines. I personally would recommend, if you're going to be recording something onto cassettes and you're not looking for like the best quality, on the bottom right is actually my Zenith little CRT VCR combo. So I can put and I'll actually explain it right here. In the next slide, but also really quickly, we talked about earlier that VHS has different recording modes. This is the standard is 2 hours, but if you've got more content like a series, you can actually, and it depends on the machine, extend the play for even longer. The only thing is that it's going to kill your quality. It won't make it unwatchable, but your quality will definitely suffer. That's just how it works. So VCRs, it basically works. Now, some are different, but it's usually going to be through RCA input, composite inputs into the VCR. Some have S-Video. We actually I have some adapters that I'll be showing you that actually have not only RCA, but also S-Video, so you can do both. And the output either can go to sometimes actually, some VCRs after 2002 have HDMI outputs. I have one that does that. So if you're worried about getting adapters for the output, some actually still do HDMI, which is really nice. And again, it's really fun being able to record your content onto VHS cassette and play on these old machines. And it's very fun. And if you actually look at this picture, again, what I was talking about with the VCR CRT machines, so on the bottom right of this image, actually, let me move my mouse. There's my mouse. Right here is actually the input. And again, one cord does video and the other does audio. If it only has one option like this, it's going to be mono. So whatever video you're going to play is probably going to be mono. But I'm actually going to show you a couple techniques on how to record onto a VHS cassette using, a modern input. So this is my current method that I use right now. And I promise, I know this is a lot of information, but you can also go back on this video that we'll have. But also it's something that once you do it once and have your setup, you will know immediately what to do. So again, how this works, so this method right here is that you've got a phone or input. I actually use my phone, and you'll take an adapter that takes a USB-C to HDMI. Now, you can plug into your computer. It can be anything. Just all that matters is that the HDMI is going to go through an adapter that turns HDMI into a V signal, and that will go into the VCR. And if you actually want to see what you're recording, again, you could also have a splitter or a CRT that's hooked up to it, so you can actually see what it looks like when you're recording it. Again, why I recommend the combo machines. But this is all you really need to do. You don't even need to have an output, because again, whatever goes through the input is going to be recorded onto the VHS cassette. I keep putting my mouse on the other window like you're actually seeing what I'm doing. I need to remember to put it there. And then the other system, if you want to kill two birds with one stone, you can actually burn your and again, we'll show software and other techniques about burning a DVD, but if you actually do that, you can burn the DVD, play it inside a DVD VCR combo machine, and that will also record onto the cassette. And so many different options for inputs. Again, if you're trying to do composite, or if you're doing composite, you can also use a DVD player. You could use just any input that gets your signal to the VCR onto the tape. That's all that really matters. And here's some recommendations for RCA adapters. I personally use the mini right here, and they work super well. Actually, some now again, your quality is going to be 480p, because that's what VHS tapes take. It's not going to be like 4K or a 1080p on the tape. That's just not really feasible. Even SVHS does like maybe 720p, but that's just if you're one to actually have some kind of quality to it. And there's a couple tips on it. Some actually do have a switch between NTSC and PAL for our European friends out there. Do not use Elgato or all-in-the-box adapters. And what I mean by that is like I've seen adapters that you plug in the composite input, and it will record inside the module. Sometimes they'll even have a display. The reason I say that you probably shouldn't do that is because you will have no control over the quality. Most of these, this is for HDMI to RCA to put into the machine, but if you want to record that, which is a whole different thing, back digitally, you can also do the same thing. I just recommend using like OBS or because these will actually act as a webcam. So if you're using OBS, you can literally just make a new video input and it will take that. But again, if you're just trying to record to the tape, not recording back digitally, then this is all you really need to turn whatever HDMI signal you're putting into it into a feasible RCA analog signal. And boxes and labels really quickly. I'm going to show you a couple resources for that. And also, you can use the same resource for like DVDs and covers. But if you're going to be doing these types of boxes, you're going to have to use 11x17 tabloid paper. It is too big for a standard letter piece of paper. I recommend cardstock or glossy photo paper. That's what I used. So again, if you have access to a printer, or if you have a place that can print that kind of size, then you're going to need that. And here's some resources for custom labels. Some of these will actually even do it for you. I personally have access to a really good printer in my office, so I just do it all myself. But if you are worried about making a mistake and then having to grab another sheet and keep printing until you get it right, I honestly recommend you can make your image, make your label, and then some of these will actually print it and send it to you, which is very nice. So again, here's some recommendations that you can use. Online labels is one of those that can do it for you. So any VHS questions really quick? I know not everybody here is probably here to do VHS, but in case you were and had questions about it, does anybody have any thoughts on that? Mine currently, my current one does not. If you're gonna ask about drives, we do have recommendations for that when we get into discs. I just wanted to get through questions now just for VHS because we're going through a lot of information. Yeah, you can get some external for cheap ones. I personally recommend getting the ones that's like more bang for your buck, just because I've actually had drives that really suck, like not turning on or are just getting write errors all the time. What are the suggested VHS brands to get the best out of the format without as many perfections? Okay, so depends if you're going to be using. So there is a format called SVHS, and I actually do have that's one of the ones I use for my work. So there is a different format that it does give you a bit more, especially in color. If your input is composite rather than RCA, and those ones will actually have a lot more quality and a lot less fuzz. So if you want to spend more on a SVHS, which are very hard to come by, the VCRs, you could do that. There's also SVHS tapes. Now, SVHS tapes do work on most standard VCRs, but if you want to use a standard VCR in standard VHS tape in a SVHS VCR, it's not gonna work. So my answer to you is, I actually, if we're talking about standard, you can even go on Amazon, and I'll actually even bring them up right now because there's a lot available. Because those ones I didn't have a recommendation for. Sony still makes some, which I personally think is probably the best. They even have, again, I can go 6 hours on that way of recording. Maxwell has some. I personally recommend Sony, again, just because they're making them in droves still, while other ones are probably going to be more expensive because they're not really making them as much as Sony. So that's why I would recommend. So if we have any more questions, if we don't have any more questions on VHS, then I'll continue into Blu-rays and discs. So much. All right. Okay. Blu-rays and DVDs. This is probably what a lot of you guys are waiting for. So, all right. And what's great about Blu-rays, and a lot of people have been asking, is there going to be anything after Blu-rays and discs? Which there are ideas of, crystals that can hold petabytes of data. I just don't think there's going to be anything feasible, at least in the consumer market, probably in the next few decades. But Blu-rays right now is the king, can hold a shit ton of information. So Blu-ray is definitely the best viable option, I feel, and they're still selling a lot of machines. I actually just got a 4K one for Christmas. Drives really good, and you can even play it on your computer too, which is a little bit of a hassle, but it's actually very fun to do. Just like putting your drive, and you can watch it on your computer as if you're using that. But again, for DVDs and Blu-rays, now again, the reason that Blu-ray was on top is because it can hold so much freaking data, and we've got all the way to like 128 gigs. Which I don't think is really needed, but for recommendations on which ones to get, I personally recommend the 50 gigabyte. It can hold to the maximum a 4K disc if you're just having a movie on it, or if you want to have not 4K but still have like some extras, like for example the Blu-rays that I've done are on 50 gigabyte ones. And actually there's different types. We're not gonna go over all that information, but there's ones where you can erase and then rewrite it if you want to like test it, or if you want it in a way that nobody can mess with it. You could probably just do the recordable one on the left, which is personally what I do. And also M discs. If you and this would even be if you don't want like a menu or like some kind of crazy interface. M discs are essentially Blu-rays that now the average Blu-ray disc is probably gonna last about 50 years, depending on what kind of conditions you play it in.
Also depends on, now, this is a key piece of advice. Do not draw on discs with a Sharpie, because those chemicals will actually seep into the bottom layer and even get into the uh the grooves and just end up damaging it, because it's not like a DVD where if you got a big scratch on it, it'll probably skip from time to time. If you destroy a section of the Blu-ray, the whole thing is fucked. The whole disc is unusable. So not only are they more fragile, but just don't do that. But M discs are rated to last, I mean, there's not really any proof of that yet, but they're supposed to last 1,000 years or even a couple hundred years. It is made for archival use. So I personally always recommend like I'll make like 10 copies of one of my Blu-rays, and then I'll make one for myself that I'll put in my safe on an M disc, just in case. You never know, like 50 years from now, if my other ones are destroyed but this one still works. That's really cool. So yeah, but one more thing about M discs. I've heard some people like to um make all their, like, they'll make every single Blu-ray an M disc, and I think that's just not a really good idea because they're a little more expensive. Unless you're only making like one copy, you're just gonna put on your shelf. If you're making a bunch, use BDRs. If you want to archive it, then use M discs, definitely. And some drives specifically support that too. But we should talk about ISO files, and this is going to go into how we actually burn these things. So, what is an ISO file? An ISO file is essentially the disk. It is literally the disk. If you get medical records or a movie, it's all going to be in an ISO file. And what's great about these is that you can essentially share the disk around through, it's basically a folder. And an ISO file, when you open it on your computer, it will even launch a virtual disk drive where next slide. There we go. So when it's open, your computer will think that a disk drive has been inserted and activated, and you'll even be able to go to an application for viewing discs like VLC, and you'll be able to play it again, like we were talking about earlier, if you actually wanted to watch it on your PC, or if you just want to access files. Again, ISO is a big folder, and DVDs are 2 folders, video and audio for those specific parts, and then Blu-ray is the certificate for the encryption. Also, if like studios have their mark on that, for copyright, and then the rest of it, which actually Blu-rays are M2 TS files, which is all in one in that codec. But 4Ks are not the same at all as normal Blu-rays. They're not. They have different color profile. Creating them is, and if some of you are here to wanting to learn about making 4Ks, this is where this one's gonna be the hardest to do. And the reason is because Ultra HD is its own copyright, it's its own brand, and only a select few can actually are licensed to make them, which is a real pain in the ass. But I'm going to show you some options to make these yourself. And what's great about these is that what's great is that a lot of people think that these Blu-ray drives or even players need to have some kind of studio verification in order to work, and that's not true at all. Because to protect themselves from copyright, especially from ripping, they'll actually have it's called AACS encryption to stop piracy, and the drive will recognize that. But when you make it at home using some of the software that I'm going to show you, it basically treats it like a home movie and won't even try to look for some kind of encryption or anything. So it's great. The reason I'm bringing this up is because some people were like, oh, do I need like some kind of encryption key? Which used to be the case, but not anymore. Now, if you don't have any kind of encryption or copyright protection, it just doesn't do anything. which is really nice. And 4K UHDs can work on normal discs. Well, depends. Here's the thing: 4K discs are like pressing a vinyl record. They're made with molded aluminum that's pressed, and discs, standard discs are made with metal alloy and cut into with laser. So the issue is that 4K discs, they hold a lot of data. So really old players and some very specific ones might have an issue with it. For example, Xbox One is nefarious for turning away homemade 4Ks. That's because the light reflects differently in the silver discs rather than the metal alloy ones, the standard ones. But for the most part, like 99% of players, at least recently, I'd say in the last 10 years, will actually read it. But I would, if you have like a really old player, you could try it, but it's not really guaranteed. And what authoring software do studios use? So most studios, like Criterion and Shout Factory, used Scenarist, which I think is the name. But it's I don't recommend this at all, and I'm going to tell you why. Because it can't burn like image files. Like you can't give it like make the ISO file inside the program and then have it burn to the disk all in one. You can't do that. It's very consumer unfriendly, and it's in 6 different packages. You got one for DVD, one for Blu-ray, and this is a very common thing that's really unfortunate. But the biggest part is that can be between $2,000 to $20,000. So if you were looking at, like maybe I should get Scenarios just to try it out, you can if you've got the wallet for it. By the way, Sony's Blueprint, which is what one of the first authoring softwares was rolled out in 2006, was $50,000. Like this is only for studios, which is really dumb. But I mean, that's their loss. Because man, it's I just look at this picture and I'm just like, what the hell is going on? But we do have alternatives, and we have alternatives that can make some really great. Not only just burning the movie that you've made to the disc, but also menu capabilities. And here's some software recommendations. Now, you might see that all the ones for Blu-ray and 4K are paid. That's just the only way, especially for 4K. That's kind of like the only way you're actually going to get a good product out of this, is if you pay for it. But these are the big 3 that you can use. And before we go into Blu-ray, again, these ones on the left. So if you want to, these are strictly DVD, by the way. DVD Flick I've used a lot, especially when I was first starting using physical media. It can create a basic menu, put sequences together, and it's free. It's very nice. I recommend that if you're going to be using if you're going to be creating DVDs. ImageBurn can do the same thing, but no menus. So those are the free ones. And then all 3 of these I've actually used before, and I'm going to tell you which one I recommend for what and why I think they're the best option. So the one that I use for these menus in this is for one of my films, Sheba King Assassination, was done on the TMP GNC Tobegenic, whatever the hell that name is. It is a free trial. It's only, well, it has a free trial, and actually you could honestly use it. Like, the only gimmick is that when you create an ISO file, it will have a copyright image that shows up when you launch the disk. If you just delete it in the folder, then it works fine. You've basically made a disk. So if you're able to learn how to do it and also make a disk in that amount of time, you could literally just make that one for free. But after that, you're probably just gonna have to pay. And I recommend this really the most, but it can only do DVD and Blu-ray. And I'll actually go to the next slide. So these 2 right here, DVD Fab and Yuhan Media, are currently the most notable ones that can do 4Ks. And it's rough because this first one here, Authoring Works, it's really good at making it has so much like customization and capabilities, especially for menus, and it also works with like MP4s, which I'm pretty sure these can too. But this one's just so much nicer to work with, but I can't do 4K. So that's my go-to for anything that is not in 4K. And if you care about menus, and then these ones both have their own, they have their own little issues, but also their own capabilities. So, for example, DVD Fab, it does have a free trial, but it is split into different, like one does DVD, one does Blu-ray, one does 4Ks. It has no menus, zero menus. Subtitles are an absolute pain in the butt to do. Uh, but it can turn any video you put into it into HDR10 and 10 plus and Dolby Vision, but it uses AI, unfortunately. Can't create chapters, and audio is you because there's no menu. If you want to change the subtitles or the audio, like if you have creator commentary, you're gonna have to use a remote or have some kind of setting that can do that. So if you want to make your, that's mainly just if you want to make your movie into HDR or Atmos, then this would be maybe what you'd want to use. But again, no menus. Yuhan Media, I personally think is the best if you're gonna do 4K and you're not caring about, because I know some people, especially in this community, really swear by HDR. And by the way, DVD Fab does take it too. So like if you put an HDR movie into it, it'll still hold that information. So will Yuhan. But Yuhan has very basic menus. It can still look cool if you really mess around with it. But it's it's not as good as authoring works. And again, these two can do DVD, Blu-ray, and 4K. So if you just want all of it in the box, and I don't know why I said HDR conversion, because it doesn't. It'll hold that information again. Like if you give it a Dolby Vision movie, it'll keep that. You can add subtitles if you like have it externally. And then this one's also split into different packages. One's for 4Ks, one for one, like different ones. But I would personally recommend Yuhan if you don't care about menus or you're going to be doing 4Ks. I think that's probably the better option. If you are doing standard Blu-rays, like you're not doing 4Ks. If you're not doing 4Ks at all, I recommend this 100%. I make all my ones with this, even if it's a 4K movie, which I'm actually starting to change. And Yuhan Media is going to be my next go-to for just for 4Ks. But those are the options. And honorable mention, because this is a software that I use at my work, is ISL Workshop, which what it will do is and actually I even have it open right here, funny enough. It can take ISO files that you can if you put your disk into a drive, it will back it up, essentially cloning it. It can create an ISO by drag and dropping folders. You can burn ISOs to disks. You can also unpack them too. There's just a lot of options that you can do. If you're worried about burning them inside the software, like if you've created something and then you want to stick in a disk and then burn it from the software, both of these do, well, all these pretty much do that. So, but if you just wanted to have some more extra stuff in it, you can use that too. Here's some recommendations for drives. Again, it is possible to use to burn discs, 4K discs onto a standard God, give me a second. It is possible to burn a 4K movie or ISO onto a standard disc. Again, it's just going to be a readability factor. And I recommend having the most power possible. You can use, again, these ones are not very powerful. And, if you're doing standard Blu-rays, you could probably do this. If you want to do 4Ks, you're going to need a lot of power just so it can write the information. Because this is going to be more than 50 gigabytes usually. Some may even reach like you'll need a 100 GB disc, which I recommend anyway if you're gonna do 4Ks. Um, so again, these are the recommendations for that. And also, whenever you're writing, there will be usually an option for your speed. Slower is safer. Remember that slower is safer. Even if it takes a long time, just if you want it to work and actually burn to it. So now we're going to go on to creating your own labels. And actually, I am going to supply all of you, and this will be also in the server as well, with a Dropbox link. This is full of references, examples. There are Photoshop files and PNG files, all in the same dimensions of what you want to use. And there's also some notes in there for any problems you might run into. But all these also have some bleed space, so if it's slightly off, which every single print, is not going to be exactly on point, you'll still be able to probably have a functional print. And again, creating your own is totally up to you on your editing capabilities, like what kind of software you got, but also what we described previously is that you can send in some of your images and they'll actually print it for you, which again is super nice. And what's great is that there are tons of references, whether you're making your own movie or creating a copy, wink wink, piracy, there are a lot of HD fan made or even scanned versions of commercial discs out there that you can use, even the labels. And the disc labels, again, same as the VHS labels, is all on special kinds of paper that you print on it, and then it's basically a big sticker that you can slap onto it. So that's it for Blu-rays and DVDs. And then here's CD as a bonus round. This is literally all you need to do. I assume all of us, because we're using VRChat, are on some kind of Windows machine. These 6 steps is all you need to do to burn a CD if you're going to be doing any kind of music stuff here. So that's very handy to have. You can even screenshot this or do whatever you want with this. Like this is all you need to do. Besides any kind of like information, like if you're going to put like metadata, like a title. That's kind of it. So, questions. I know that was a lot of information. The video will be available, and there's a lot of, we've got templates here. There's other information that I didn't talk about that like was on the slide and little tips. So it'll be easy for you to go back to in case you missed anything or want some extra clarification on something. And there's tons of resources out there, again, on other people creating things like this. And because this media is definitely having a big resurgence over the last few years. And even though it's not really a big thing, because the average revenue for a movie from physical media is sometimes not even 1%. So it's a very small thing, but they're still making them in droves and making, collections and limited edition steel books and stuff like that. It is still alive and well, and I think it will be for a while. And actually, I think it'll be even more alive in the next couple of years based on the resurgence that we're seeing. So again, if you guys have any questions, I'm not actually looking at if anybody's raising their hand or not. And the Dropbox is here. It has templates and print labels for music, like cassettes, but also Blu-rays as well. And there's also a lot of other resources out there as well. So yeah, we did this in under an hour. That's really good. I think I broke a land speed record for talking. Speaking of cassettes, would you recommend using Type 1 or Type 2 tapes for doing physical releases of music? Just curious. Also, how dare you assume I'm on Windows coming from single Linux user? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Yeah, I think Type 2 would actually be a better idea, because I have heard that those It depends on where you're going to be recording it with, but I've heard that it does have lower hissing. It's just higher quality. You know, like Type 2 is better than Type 1. I think that'll be easy to remember. Side note, for physical CDs, there's some movies soundtracks are only on the physical disc, so some of them have lost media on them. Ooh. Again, if you have a tool like ISO Workshop, which that is about $40 for a one-time purchase, I believe, a year of updates, those that software will allow you to unpack it. And also, it depends on how old that CD is. You might just be able to drag and drop it from the disc, honestly, because I've done that a few times. Oh, one other thing. Again, on the Blu-ray covers that are in that folder, they are purposefully too big. Because in case if you make a bad cut or something, you'll still be able to like shave that off and actually make it fit. So if you actually print that and it's too big, it's supposed to be. Yeah, have some extra space when you make yours. I do recommend eBay and Amazon for standard Blu-ray cases. They've even got like, ones for 3 discs or 5, 6. Oh my god. Walked into that one. And also they're very cheap too, which is really nice. If no one else has any more questions, I hope I answered everybody's questions and gave you the basic rundown of how this kind of thing works. Again, for software, I do recommend TPGNC. Let's actually go back on that slide. Yeah, so I do recommend this one if you're going to be doing standard Blu-rays, and if you actually want to make 4Ks, I recommend Yuhan. It all depends if you like menus, honestly. None of these do animated menus, but again, this one makes better looking ones, and then Yuhan just like is very basic. So and this is just for discs. For VHS, I think we talked the most about that, and I do different ones like that. What's the process of making a menu like? Depends on the program. Usually when you bring in a video file, it will make it for you. And you'll be able to change things from like a lot of them actually have motion menus, and what that is that the background can move, or you'll have like a thumbnail little image that can move as well. A lot of it is actually animated. It just depends on like your placement, and also your what fonts you're going to use, what kind of images you're going to put into it. That stuff is what's mostly custom. And you can also add in your own stuff too. So it's very fun making those. But again, if you don't care about menus, Yuhan might be the best way to go. If you do, and not making 4Ks, then authoring works. Yeah, but it's fun and easy. I really do believe that. Do you have to make a whole scene just for the menu? You can. For example, the one I did on there it is for for Shiba King assassination, on right here. This one actually is a bunch of different clips. It's a moving video. And I edited that myself and then just put it in. This one right here, I actually have the characters in the avatar, so I literally just like filmed myself in this office space. This one was just an image. So you can totally edit together your own menu on the background. It's just, if you're going to have animated transitions or elements, currently that's not really possible with the ones I recommended. I know some people really want to be super crazy with that, unless you have $2,000 to $20,000 for scenarist. That's up to you. Yeah. So no, but it's a fun experience, especially when you finish and you hold that thing in your hand. It's really great. I actually I made about 20 Blu-rays of not this film, but VR Digital Frontier, which is out on YouTube. Totally recommend you go see it. It's a feature documentary. Man, so many slides. There it is, right there. Go watch it. And we actually sell those at a convention. People like physical media. People like Blu-rays. I didn't think I was going to sell any. We sold all of them. So people do want them. And it's a great gift for your friends, your crew. It's a fun thing to make and do, especially if you've got a player and a good theater system. Yeah. All right, we've just made over an hour. So, one last time, if anybody has any questions on anything specific, if not right now, but later, again, just shoot me a DM. I'm always open. I can even answer you questions about, especially authoring works, because I've been using that a lot. So many fucking slides. I'm actually lost in it. There it is. All right. Well, if that's it, then thank you guys so much for coming in. I really appreciate you guys being here, and for anybody that's probably watching the recording. If you make anything, I would love to see. Even just send it to me. I would love to see your work, and have fun. Get creative. Seriously, the limits are only by your imagination. And if the world goes to shit or we get nuked, at least our Blu-rays will survive, and our VRChat randomness will be preserved for all humanity to see.